Imagine this. You are standing on the surface of the moon. Humanity is watching you live on television. But back inside your spacecraft, the one engine that can bring you home has just become useless. Neil Armstrong accidentally broke a crucial switch. Without it, he and Buzz Aldrin would have been stranded forever. The entire mission and their lives were saved not by NASA's billion-dollar technology, but by a cheap ballpoint pen. This is just one of many hidden stories from Apollo 11. Stories you've rarely heard. Tonight, we dive deep into the untold mysteries, forgotten heroes, near-death moments, and even the mental struggles of the men who went to the moon. When Armstrong and Aldrin stepped out of the lunar module, the exit was tight. Armstrong's bulky suit accidentally snapped off a small plastic piece, the ascent engine arming switch. It was just a tiny button, but without it, the engine wouldn't start. Without the engine, the lunar module would never lift off the moon's surface. They would die there, becoming permanent monuments on another world. Hours later, when they returned inside, they realized the horror. The switch was broken. Panic set in. Millions were celebrating on Earth. But Armstrong and Aldrin quietly faced death. Buzz Aldrin thought fast. He understood that a switch is just a way to complete an electrical circuit. If something could bridge the gap, the engine could ignite. Searching around, he noticed his felt-tip pen. Carefully, he jammed it into the broken socket. It worked. That pen reconnected the circuit. When the moment came, the engine roared to life. Humanity's greatest mission was saved, not by rocket science, but by office stationery. While Armstrong and Aldrin made history, a third man orbited the moon, Michael Collins. He never set foot on the surface. Collins' job was to pilot the command module, waiting for his crewmates to return. For hours, he circled the moon alone. And when his spacecraft passed behind the lunar far side, even radio contact with Earth was lost. At that moment, Michael Collins was truly the loneliest human in history, the only living soul, completely cut off from both Earth and his crew. Later, Armstrong and Aldrin were celebrated worldwide. Collins quietly faded from the spotlight. He once said, "I felt like I was the only person not invited to the biggest party in history." Collins' sacrifice, staying behind to ensure their safe return, was essential. Without him, Armstrong and Aldrin could never have made it home. The risks were enormous. President Richard Nixon's staff prepared a speech in case Apollo 11 failed. The draft began. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. It went on to honor Armstrong and Aldrin as martyrs for mankind's noblest goal. Funeral ceremonies were planned. The speech was ready to be broadcast if the lunar module failed to return. Thankfully, the world never heard it, but that speech remains a chilling reminder. The line between triumph and tragedy was razor thin. When the astronauts splashed down on Earth, they weren't greeted with parades right away. Instead, they were locked in quarantine for 21 days. NASA feared they might bring back lunar microbes, alien bacteria, or viruses that could devastate Earth. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins lived inside a sealed trailer, observed like specimens. They waved to President Nixon through a glass window. The image looked surreal. The heroes of humanity treated like potential biohazards. No alien diseases were found. But for 3 weeks, the men who had conquered the moon lived like prisoners. The Apollo program cost $24 billion, over $100 billion in today's money. More than 400,000 engineers, scientists, and workers contributed. But this victory had critics. As astronauts planted the American flag on the moon, protests raged back home. Many asked, why spend billions on space while millions of Americans struggled with poverty, racial inequality, and the Vietnam War? A New York Times article once argued, instead of one moon landing, the same money could build 120 Harvard-sized universities across the US. Behind the glory, there was bitterness. Apollo 11 was not just a scientific achievement, it was also a symbol of politics, power, and misplaced priorities. Even after the moonwalk, danger followed. On their return journey, the service module, a massive part of the spacecraft, broke apart. Its debris floated dangerously close to the tiny command module carrying the 3 astronauts. A single piece of shrapnel could have ripped through their capsule, killing them instantly. NASA had planned thrusters to push the service module safely away, but those thrusters failed. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins could only watch helplessly as deadly debris swirled around them. It was a miracle they survived untouched. This part of the story is rarely told. The astronauts were just as close to death on the way back as they were on the moon. Apollo 11 wasn't just about space. It changed life on Earth forever. NASA's massive demand for microchips forced companies to mass produce them cheaply. Before Apollo, integrated circuits were expensive and rare. After Apollo, prices dropped by 90% in just 5 years. Those chips became the foundation of computers, smartphones, and the digital revolution. In a way, Apollo 11 didn't just take us to the moon, it brought us the iPhone. Returning to Earth, the astronauts were hailed as gods. But the human mind isn't built for such fame. Neil Armstrong withdrew from public life, uncomfortable with global celebrity. Buzz Aldrin spiraled into depression and alcoholism, struggling with the pressure of being the second man. Aldrin later admitted, "The hardest part was not going to the moon, but coming back to Earth. The glory of Apollo had a hidden curse." These men carried psychological scars that few understood. Apollo 11 is remembered as humanity's greatest triumph. But behind the grainy black and white broadcast lies a story of fragile humans, near-fatal mistakes, hidden costs, and untold sacrifices. A pen saved the mission. A forgotten astronaut orbited in silence. A president's secret speech waited in case of disaster. Heroes were quarantined like aliens. Billions were spent while protests burned on Earth. And the men who walked on the moon battled demons no one saw. The moon landing wasn't just a leap for mankind, it was also a mirror, reflecting our courage, flaws, and struggles. Perhaps the real story of Apollo 11 isn't about reaching the moon, but about what it revealed about us here on Earth.